Nigel Farage is in trouble. He plainly is in trouble. He's made a complete mess of this business of the donations. I don't know how he can ever get out of it, actually. And he's now, as I said here last week, trying to start a new career as a victim.
I'm pleased to welcome this evening the author and broadcaster and columnist Peter Hitchens. Hello to you, Peter.
Hi, Kait.
Hello, and the author and columnist Lionel Shriver, back again with us today. Hi, Lionel.
Hi, Kate. Nice to be back.
They make a winning combination, these two. It's been a few weeks since we've had you both on. I hope we find you well. Whereabouts in the world are you both? Peter, are you in England?
I'm in Oxford.
In Oxford. Lionel?
New York.
I'd just like to geolocate both of you to know where we are. It's hot and steamy here, and it's probably the same in New York as well. We're going to dig into some of the big stories of the day, and I'll start with this one, which is that the battle lines have been drawn in the classroom. Education Secretary Lucy Powell's taking aim at Michael Gove's legacy, claiming that his rigid focus on traditional academic subjects has acted as a straitjacket and left 1 million young people behind. She's essentially blaming him for the 1 million NEETs not in education or education. Powell wants to rip up the one-size-fits-all model to give technical and practical skills an earlier look in. Michael Gove spoke to the media about the changes the government are making to the education system.
Having an all-round academic education to the age of 16 has been proven in the highest performing jurisdictions, i.e. the countries with the smartest kids, to be the best way of giving them opportunities for the future. Yes, there is a case for improving technical and vocational education, but you don't do that by diverting children at the age of 14 away from academic subjects.
That was Michael Gove speaking earlier. They are rowing on the pages of the Times. Is this a case of different policy for a different time, or does Lucy Powell or Michael Gove, do they have strong points to make? Peter, let's come to you on this.
Well, I feel much as Henry Kissinger felt during the Iran-Iraq war. I wish they could both lose. I don't think any of them has anything particularly useful to say. Michael Gove is one of the many education secretaries, they're probably the most active, who's been trying to put tons of lipstick on the pig of British education, which was destroyed in 1965 by wrecking the state grammar schools. And everything since then has been a mess, and it's irrecoverable until anybody admits that that was a mistake, which he wouldn't do. In fact, he was absolutely against the restoration of state grammar schools or of academic selection. It's perfectly true what Lucy Powell says, that not everybody wants the same education, and it's absurd offering quite a lot of people the pseudo grammar school, watered down academic education, which so many British secondary state schools provide. It does them no good at all. It bores them stiff. It provides them with certificates at the end which are no use to them, and doesn't actually give them any kind of training for life. So I'm not sorry that anybody starts criticising that, but the problem with Lucy Powell, of course, is if you said to her, well, in that case, what we need to do is to return to selection by ability in state secondary schools, she'd call you some kind of reactionary fascist and wouldn't have anything to do with it. Neither of them had anything useful to say. I haven't heard an education secretary say anything useful for most of my life, I'm afraid, and it's deeply dispiriting to hear this going on at such a pathetic level.
So just to be absolutely clear, Peter,
any kind of at all, and they continue to be, and nobody will admit what's wrong with them.
OK, so to be absolutely clear, so we can lay our case out, what, in your opinion, is the best way to go? And let's just focus on secondary schools here, because this is where both of them are talking about what happens from the age of really 14 onwards. Labour's suggesting that they take GCSEs in the sort of traditional core subjects, and then they add on, students have the opportunity to add on, if they want, qualifications in technical skills. It could be AI, engineering, it could be a trade, for example. That's what they want to do, offer the option for that to happen. Michael Gove, as we know, really brought about, and he was successful in this, trying to raise the academic level of secondary schools, state secondary schools. So
okay, who says he was successful? He says he was successful.
Well,
what is this? There's no objective measure of this. It's all.
There actually is. I mean, students are now attaining levels which are much more in line with our European counterparts and other Western countries. Yeah.
I don't know whether there's any truth in that. What we're using is an inflated currency, so that
have you been to a London secondary school 30 years ago and then stepped into one today? Because there has been a dramatic change. There really has.
There has been a dramatic change in London, but that's a different question. If you look nationally at the picture, that's quite different. But my more fundamental point is this. What we have is very large numbers of certificates being issued, GCSEs, A-levels, and university degrees, which bear no relation in value to the things they're supposed to resemble. I was educated before the revolution. I did O-levels, which were tough, demanding, unseen, essay requiring exams which you could fail. Indeed, I did fail one of mine. And then I went on to do A-levels, which was similar, only worse. And then we moved on to degrees. Now, all those things have been hugely devalued, and they have the same names as what they had 60 years ago, but they're not the same thing. And to be content with the handing out of these devalued certificates is like believing that the German money which was issued after the collapse of the mark in the 1920s was worth anything.
Lionel.
Wheelbarrow money, and these are wheelbarrow exams and wheelbarrow degrees. And Mr. Gove has never addressed that and doesn't want to.
Okay. Let's let Lionel in. Lionel, give us the answer to this. Where do you sit on it all?
I agree with Peter in that I think that educational attainment across the Western world has depreciated. And therefore, when you are comparing British results with the continents, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. It may simply mean that the continent's standards have also plummeted. I am generally open to the idea that more young people should be encouraged to go into the trades. That's where the jobs are. You can actually make a lot of money as a plumber or a carpenter or an electrician, and it's a satisfying, hands-on job, and people are very grateful when you know what you're doing. So I'm big on that, but I would say that it's a question of when your education would diverge from an academic path. And I do think it's extremely important that we have a population that can read, ideally even read an entire book. Oh, wow. Which is now, even in universities, being perceived as an unreasonable ask.
Well, it's difficult, isn't it? Because we've shoved social media and smartphones in front of kids, and surprise, surprise, they've lost their attention span.
Quite a lot of parents have tried for many years, I think, to resist the advance of screens, even when it was only television screens, and keep their children from them. And what they tend to get for that is isolation and mockery. But we now see the end result of it in everybody having a television screen, and worse than that, a computer screen in their pocket, which enables them to waste almost all their time. But this is not the issue we're discussing. The issue we're discussing is whether we can do anything about our education system.
Well, it is adapting to what's in front of us. And Lucy Powell's point, Peter, is that in front of us are 1 million young kids who are not in education, not in training or any apprenticeship or in employment.
That's
and that is what we're dealing with. And so the idea that they take some traditional GCSE subjects, maths, science, etc., which other ones? English, you would take, and then they get the opportunity to add more practical subjects on. Surely that is just making kids useful, adapting our education system rather than seeing kids drop out of school, seeing our education system embrace some kids differently.
Exactly, but how many of these schemes to increase the number of apprenticeships have come to anything, which I think governments of every stripe have announced over the past 20 years? Nothing ever happens, as far as I can see. The number of
apprenticeships went up and then it's dropped. There are some really good apprenticeship schemes. We use apprentices here at Times Radio. It's just that they've had a bad rep because there is not enough of them, and the really good technical degrees, which are sort of pseudo degree and pseudo apprenticeship, are over subscribed. They're with companies like BAE Systems, and they offer a fantastic deal for kids. So there's
there aren't very many of them, as we agree. In the German-speaking countries of the continent of Europe, you tend to find that academic the education, state-provided education in those countries is academically selective, generally from the age perhaps of 13 or 11, depending on which country it is. And if you don't qualify and aren't seen as being suited to an academic education, then you go to a different sort of school, a technical school or a more general school, and you're more likely to go into an apprenticeship. But in this country, we detain children in schools doing pseudo-academic courses, which often they can't understand because they can't read because they never learnt in primary school, right up until 18, and then in many cases they're forced to go on and stay at school until 2021 in alleged universities. An awful lot of the disorder in schools, which any teacher will tell you is a very serious problem, is caused by the large number of children being forced to remain in schools when
bored children effectively.
I left school at 15.
I left at 16.
Yeah, it would be impossible for either of us to do that now.
Yeah, exactly.
Lots of people yearn to leave school and get on with their lives, and they can't do it because we've put so much premium on keeping people in school and thought so little about what they do. When we had the grammar schools, we also had things called secondary modern schools. And one of the worst things about the education debate of the past 40, 50 years has been the slandering of the secondary modern schools as being bad, terrible schools and dustbins, which they were not. And there's a tremendous book, and typically in our country, it's never been brought out by a major publisher. He had to publish it himself. It's called Secondary Mod, by a man called Dick Stroud. I can't recommend it highly enough. He writes with enormous knowledge and experience. He's done a fantastic amount of research on what the secondary modern schools were actually like and what they achieved for their pupils.
All right.
And they weren't. There was nothing ideal about the pre-1965 system. It needed a lot done to make it better, but it was still an enormous amount better than what we have now.
Okay, all right.
Fake academic education for millions of children who don't benefit from it.
Okay, John agrees with you, Lionel. Gove's education reforms have not produced the improvements that many people think they have. It's true that the UK has risen in the international rankings, but this is mainly because other countries have slipped down. If you look at the PISA results, the Programme for International Student Assessment, that becomes clear. I want to insert something a bit extra to quickly talk about, because Nigel Farage has spoken to me tonight here at Times Radio about Rupert Lowe's plans, the Restore leader. At the weekend, he called for the two parties to join together to form a coalition, to form a united one party. Here's what Farage had to say on that.
He's not a very easy person to deal with, but if there is a chat to be had, I will have that chat.
And how powerful could it be, a Reform Restore coalition?
Well, it's not so much how powerful it could be, it's just the potential that a Restore vote could damage Reform's prospects of winning many, many seats. The honest truth is, a lot of Restore so-called supporters are beginning to recognise that.
Yeah, he said he slightly doubted the integrity of Rupert's offer, and there are 5 conditions in place as well. But let's just talk about the theory of this, Lionel, with you first of all. Would it be a good thing or a bad thing for Reform and Restore to unite together?
Do you mean me? Or do you mean
Lionel? Lionel first, please.
It's certainly a good thing if you have right of center views. I mean, if the right is going to have any chance in the next election, then it's got to get together. I mean, the trouble is that the differences between Restore and Reform have been largely personal and not really doctrinal. I mean, they have a few differences in terms of their platforms. I think Rupert Lowe is a little more radical on immigration, but otherwise they are dividing up an electorate that they need to be united. And I think that supporters of both parties should be greeting the possibility of these two men getting over their differences with a sense of relief.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if Reform voters would turn their nose up at this, because Restore are to the right of Reform. They're not right of centre, they're right of right, I suppose. And some of the conditions are that Reform, or that there would be a pledge for both parties to have policy, for example, to ban the burqa and halal meat, to rule out any former Conservative ministers in future cabinets. So you couldn't have Suella Braverman up there or Robert Jennings. Henrik. I mean, they are extreme views, Lionel. They also want to bring back the death penalty, by the way. Do you think Reform voters who are maybe former Tory or Labour voters would draw the line at some of those policies? Is there a chance that actually people would move back to the Tories?
Well, I think it is way too early to write the Tories off for 2029, and I'm on the record on that one. I think that Restore and Reform would obviously have to come up with a platform that they could both comfortably endorse, and I could see dropping a couple of those details. Nobody's going to win or lose an election on the basis of whether or not we ban the burqa and halal meats.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Peter.
Well, it's again, Vladimir Ilyich Lenin has the best comment on this. Whom any relationship between Nigel Farage and Rupert Lowe depends very heavily on who's in charge. If Nigel Farage isn't in charge, then Rupert Lowe is not going to be happy, and vice versa. And it's quite plain the two can't work together realistically. It isn't about politics. It's about the fact that nobody who has ever worked closely with Nigel Farage has lasted very long, and I don't think that's going to change. They are in deep trouble. They've fallen apart because the only thing which kept them together was a serious belief that they might get into government. And now that's fading away. They can go back to what they really, really, really enjoy, which is fighting with each other. Again, also we bring in Henry Kissinger, his old joke about academic quarrels being so bitter because the stakes are so small. As soon as the stakes become small again, as soon as you cease to be in serious contention for government, you can start, everybody in politics can start doing the thing that they enjoy most of all, which is backbiting. And watch these two do it. They'll be biting backs as hard as you
already today.
Well, exactly. So
Rupert Lowe accused Nigel Farage of lying, and we were only a few hours in.
Nigel Farage is in trouble. He plainly is in trouble. He's made a complete mess of this business of the donations. I don't know how he can ever get out of it, actually. And he's now, as I said here last week, trying to start a new career as a victim. But he's launched this ridiculous scheme, which everybody knows is unworkable, of trying to get what remains of our armed services to drive illegal migrants back across the Channel into France. There are so many ways in which this won't work that it's hard to know where to begin. And he knows it. And yet he goes on the radio and television and he says...
It is whether it is performative, and we obviously asked him about that today as well. Look, we must leave it there for time. Just a message in from David in Didsbury in Manchester. The current world of education has been created by the boomers and Gen Xs that criticise it. He says, I supported my daughter in her GCSEs and A-levels. They are deeper and more interesting than the O and A levels of the 70s. This is his opinion. The differences include that they're better taught, more analytical and supported by well-written revision literature. For the first time, I enjoyed Shakespeare and Macbeth. There you go. Thanks for your opinions. Keep them coming in. More from Lionel Shriver and Peter Hitchens.